Picture this. The so-called HOA police roll into my junkyard in their shiny SUV, geared up to drown me in fines. 10 minutes later, they're hiking back down the driveway on foot, gaping at a shredder still spitting out blue metal flakes from what used to be their ride. Crazy, right? How did we end up at the moment my grandpa, calm as ever, fed their car to a machine that chews washing machines for breakfast? Stick around, and you'll hear every twist. From the day a power-hungry neighbor grabbed the HOA throne to the instant her grand plan blew up louder than a diesel engine smashing a steel beam. Grab a snack, settle in, and hit the comments with where you're watching from, because this ride gets bumpy, loud, and oddly satisfying. It's a tale of rust, rules, and a shred of common sense that outlasted a whole SUV. It all started when Brenda moved into the big, fancy house at the end of the street. You know the type. Never smiles, always dressed like she's heading to a business meeting no one else was invited to. From the first day, she looked at the rest of us like we were doing life wrong. Her driveway was spotless. Her bushes looked fake, they were trimmed so perfectly, and her black SUV took up half the road. Before Brenda showed up, our neighborhood was chill. The HOA didn't bother anyone unless someone's grass got really wild or the mailbox area started looking like a jungle. We had cookouts, shared tools, waved at each other. It was simple and easy. Then Brenda decided she was running the show. She got herself voted in as president, and suddenly it was like we lived under some mini-government. She actually introduced herself once as President McLaughlin, like she was the head of a country instead of a quiet cul-de-sac. The rules started piling up. What color your front door could be, how long your car could sit in the driveway, and don't even get me started on approved yard decor. You could feel the shift, like we'd all stepped into a neighborhood version of a school detention. Brenda wasn't just trying to clean up the place. She wanted control. I've lived at the edge of this neighborhood for years, right where the pavement gives way to gravel and the houses start getting farther apart. I work as a sculptor and do metal work on the side. I take old metal, stuff most people would throw away, and turn it into something useful or something that makes people stop and stare. My place sits on 5 acres, and yeah, it's not what most people would call pretty. There are stacks of old steel, rows of gears, engine parts, and weird-looking pieces I've collected for future projects. To someone like Brenda, it probably looked like a junkyard. But to me, it's a workshop, a studio, and sometimes a treasure hunt. Then there's Grandpa Joe. He lives with me and helps around the property. He's retired now, but he used to run heavy machines for a living. Knows every bolt and button like the back of his hand. Doesn't talk much, but when he does, it's usually something that makes you stop and think. He likes things neat and clear, even if it's just piles of scrap. Where I see wild ideas and future sculptures, he sees a day's work waiting to happen. Brenda, though, she just saw a mess. Rust and noise and disorder. She couldn't see the art or the purpose. She just saw something that didn't fit her perfect picture. And that's when the real problems started. It didn't take long for Brenda to start her campaign. The first letter I got was about one of my sculptures, a tall, twisted piece I made out of old plowshares. It had been sitting in the same spot for years, right inside my property line, bothering no one. Suddenly, it was labeled an unauthorized landscaping structure. I replied with a copy of the original HOA rules, and a photo showing the sculpture had been there long before she ever unpacked her first moving box. You'd think that would have ended it, but it only made her push harder. Next came complaints about my truck and forklift. She called them unsightly and said they threw off the neighborhood's visual balance. I guess a flatbed that hauls steel doesn't match her white picket fence fantasy. That's when I realized I had to start keeping track. Every email, every letter, even the weird looks she gave me at the grocery store. I saved it all in a folder on my computer. I jokingly named Brenda's Greatest Hits. Grandpa Joe didn't say much at first, just shook his head and muttered something like, "That woman's got too much time and not enough to do." He was right. While she typed up complaints, we were out back building things with our hands, breathing in rust and diesel. She thought she was fixing the neighborhood. All she was really doing was poking a bear she didn't understand. Brenda wasn't done yet. She brought in backup. Chad, the HOA treasurer. Chad always looked like he was scared of getting in trouble, even when he was doing nothing. He followed Brenda around like a little shadow, nodding at everything she said like it was gospel. One day, I noticed they'd slapped a magnetic sign on the side of an old blue Crown Victoria. It said, "Community Standards Enforcement," in bold white letters, like they were some kind of neighborhood police. It would have been funny if they weren't so serious about it. Then came the letter. Official this time. Brenda and Chad were planning a property inspection on a specific day, claiming they needed to assess violations and apply fines. It wasn't an offer or a suggestion. They were coming, with clipboards and cameras, ready to nitpick every bolt and beam in my yard. It was clear they weren't looking for answers. They were looking for ammo. I talked to an old friend of mine who's a lawyer. He said not to block them, that could cause more problems, but to keep records of everything. Photos, audio, video, the whole deal. Let them dig their own hole, he told me. Just stand back and let it happen. So that's what I did. I didn't argue. I didn't panic. I just waited, because something told me Brenda was about to step way over the line, and when she did, I'd be ready. The day before the inspection, I gave Grandpa Joe a simple task. Clear out everything in Bay 3, that's our main shredding zone, where the real junk goes when it's too far gone for art or parts. At the time, it held an old rusted-out Fiat I'd pulled from a ditch years ago, and a pile of scrap that was set to be crushed and hauled off. I told him to clear the whole thing, every last piece. He nodded, like always. Grandpa doesn't ask a lot of questions. He just gets it done. Right on schedule, at 10 a.m. sharp, Brenda and Chad pulled into the driveway. Instead of Brenda's usual flashy SUV, they showed up in a worn-down blue Crown Vic, like an old cop car trying to relive its glory days. And where do they park? Right in Bay 3. No warning, no asking, just rolled straight into the shred zone and left it there like it was some kind of VIP spot. I saw it, and almost laughed, but said nothing. Brenda hopped out, clipboard in hand, already wearing her best "I'm here to fix this mess" face. Chad followed behind with a camera, snapping pictures of everything like we were hiding state secrets. They walked right past the workshop, right past the signs, heading straight for the back where Grandpa was already moving steel. They had no idea what they'd just walked into. And they definitely didn't know where they'd parked. While Brenda was in full rant mode, pointing at every piece of metal like it had personally offended her, Grandpa Joe was already at work. I heard the backhoe start up with its usual growl, and then the loud, deep rumble of the shredder kicking on. It's the kind of sound you feel in your chest, like thunder chewing rocks. Brenda flinched and looked around like someone had set off a bomb. "What is that awful noise?" she snapped. I stayed calm. "Just some scrap getting processed," I said, like it was no big deal. Because to us, it wasn't. I glanced over just in time to see Grandpa drop the rusted Fiat into the shredder's mouth. The machine let out a horrible screech, like metal screaming as it got torn apart. Bits of steel popped into the air, then dropped like heavy hail into the collection bin below. Brenda didn't even notice. She was too busy pointing out visual violations and muttering about community values. Chad was trying to zoom in on a patch of oil on my gravel, like he'd found evidence in a crime scene. Then came the moment. Grandpa, doing exactly what I'd told him, looked at Bay 3, saw the only thing left was the Crown Vic, and moved right for it. He eased the forklift under it, lifted it with perfect balance, and turned toward the shredder. I kept my face straight, but inside I was panicking and laughing at the same time. The Crown Vic hovered for a second, then dropped in. The sound it made? Louder, messier, full of crunching plastic and breaking glass. Brenda paused mid-sentence. "What on earth was that?" she asked, looking annoyed. I shrugged. "Probably hit an engine block," I said. "Some of that scrap's packed tight." After they finished their little tour of complaints, Brenda clapped her clipboard shut like she'd just wrapped up an important mission. "We'll be leaving now," she said, all proud and puffed up. But when they walked toward Bay 3 to get back in their car, they both stopped cold. The space where their Crown Vic had been parked was now just empty dirt and a few metal crumbs. Chad's mouth opened, but nothing came out. He finally managed, "Brenda, the car." It was right here. Brenda spun around, eyes wide. "What do you mean it was here? Cars don't just disappear." She started pacing like she'd lost her phone or her mind. Maybe both. That's when Grandpa Joe rounded the corner, wiping his hands with an old rag, calm as ever. "All done with Bay 3, he said with a nod. "Cleared out everything, just like you told me." Then he held up a bent, shiny piece of scrap, still wearing a flake of blue paint. "That Ford had good steel. Bit more plastic than I like, but it held up okay." Brenda's face turned bright red, then pale, then some shade in between. Chad looked like he was about to cry or throw up. Brenda pointed a shaking finger at the twisted metal in Grandpa's hand. That was our car!" she shouted. Grandpa blinked, then glanced at me. "Oh," he said. "Guess I should have checked the plates first." Brenda whipped out her phone and called the sheriff like she was reporting a bank robbery. She was shouting about destruction of property, threats to authority, and unlawful shredding, whatever that means. About 20 minutes later, 2 deputies pulled up. They didn't seem thrilled to be there, just 2 guys stuck in the middle of a neighbor fight on a sunny day. Brenda ran up to them, voice high and shaky, pointing at the shredder and the pile of twisted metal like she'd uncovered a crime scene. I let her talk first. Then I calmly showed them my permits, business license, and the zoning paperwork that proves my land is cleared for light industrial use, including the shredder. Everything was in order. Grandpa Joe backed it up too, standing there with grease on his hands, saying, "I was told to clear Bay 3. Car was in Bay 3, so I cleared it." One of the deputies walked over to the shredder's bin, leaned down, and picked up a bent magnet that still read, "Community Standards Enforcement." He turned it over in his hand, looked at me, and almost smiled. After a few minutes of looking around and checking things, they made it official. "This is a civil issue," the older deputy said. "No crime here. You're free to take it up in court if you want." Brenda looked like her brain had hit a wall. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. The law wasn't on her side, and she knew it. After that day, things changed fast. Brenda tried to spin the story like I had set her up, but it didn't really matter. Too many people had already heard what happened. Word spread quick. Everyone in the neighborhood knew she'd parked her own car in a metal shredder zone, ignored the signs, and got it turned into scrap. She ended up stepping down as HOA president not long after. Some said it was because of the embarrassment, others because the HOA didn't want to deal with the possible lawsuit I could have filed. Either way, she was gone. Chad? He disappeared. Not literally, but no one saw him at meetings anymore. No more camera, no more clipboard. Just silence. The HOA itself backed way off. The rules that Brenda had been trying to shove through got tossed. Things actually started feeling normal again. Neighbors waving, people helping each other out, the way it used to be. A few people stopped by just to thank me for standing my ground. Some even brought snacks for Grandpa Joe. He didn't say much, just smiled and nodded like none of it had ever bothered him. As a thank you, I bought him a brand new recliner with built-in massage. He deserved it. And me? I got my yard back, my peace back, and more space to keep building the kind of scrap art Brenda would have hated. Funny how things work out. So yeah, turns out shredder justice is real, and sometimes it shows up wearing work boots and a grease-stained ball cap. We didn't plan it that way, but man, it worked out better than I could have imagined. I'm still kind of amazed Brenda and Chad thought parking next to a giant industrial shredder was a good idea. But hey, actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences get turned into scrap metal. Anyway, I'm curious. What's the wildest run-in you've ever had with a power-tripping HOA landlord or anyone else who thought a clipboard made them king? Drop your story in the comments. I read all of them. And if you want more stories like this one, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. You never know what might roll into the yard next.